History of my oldest ancestors of whom I am very proud descend. July 8, 975, dies, in Winchester, Hampshire, Edgar the Peaceful, King of the Saxons, King of England, my 35th grandfather, 3 times my grandfather, who fulfilled the wish of his great-grandfather Alfred the Great, King of Wessex, to unify the kingdoms of England. Edgar was the 9th grandfather of Dom Afonso III, King of Portugal, my 25th and 26th grandfather. Edgar, King of the Saxons, King of England, born in 925 and died in Winchester, Hampshire, on the 8th of July 975, was the son of Edmund I, the Old, King of the Saxons, and Saint Elgiver of Shaftesbury, paternal grandson of Edward the Elder, King of Wessex and Elfleda, and paternal great-grandson of Alfred the Great, King of Wessex. Edgar, better known as Edgar the Peaceful, was King of England from 959 until his death. He was the youngest son of King Edmund and brother of King Edwin. In 958, Edgar led a revolt of nobles against his brother Edwin that ended with the secession of the kingdoms of Northumbria and Mercia under his power. As his brother eventually did, England was reunited under his crown. Edgar consolidated the union of the Kingdom of England during a reign without major internal or external conflicts. Early years and rise. Edgar was the son of Edmund I and Elgiver of Shaftesbury. With the death of King Edmund in 946, Edgar's uncle, Edridu, ruled until 955. Edridu was succeeded by his nephew, Eduino, Edmundo's eldest son. Edwin was not a popular king and his reign was marked by conflict with the nobles and the church, mainly St. Dunstan and Archbishop Oda. In 957 the lords of Mercia and Northumbria changed their allegiance to Edgar. A conclave of nobles declared Edgar king of the territory north of the Thames. Edgar became King of England after Edwin's death in October 959, at the age of 16. Government. One of Edgar's first actions was to free Dunstan from exile and have him become Bishop of Worcester and Abbot of Glastonbury Abbey, later Bishop of London and later Archbishop of Canterbury. Photo of the stained glass window of Edgar's coronation by Dunstan. Dunstan remained Edgar's advisor throughout his reign. Although Edgar may not have been a particularly peaceful man, his reign was peaceful. The Kingdom of England was well governed and Edgar consolidated the political unity achieved by his predecessors. At the end of his reign, England was sufficiently unified that it was unlikely to return to a state of division between rival kings, as had occurred to some extent under Edrado's reign. William Blackstone mentions that King Edgar standardized measurements throughout the kingdom. According to George Molyneux, Edgar's reign, far more than the reigns of Alfred or Athelstan, was probably the most crucial phase in the development of the institutional structures that were fundamental to royal rule in the 11th century kingdom. Indeed, an early 11th century king, Canute the Great, declares in a letter to his subjects that it is my will that the whole nation, ecclesiastical and lay, firmly observe the laws of Edgar, that all men chose and swore at Oxford. Coronation in Bath. Edgar was crowned in Bath and along with his wife Elfrida of Devon, was anointed, setting a precedent in the coronation of a Queen of England. Edgar's coronation took place in a planned imperial ceremony, an action that must have required much preliminary diplomacy. This service, designed by Dunstano himself and commemorated with a poem in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, formed the basis of today's British coronation ceremony. The symbolic coronation was an important step. Other kings of Britain came and gave their allegiance to Edgar soon after in Chester. 6 kings of Great Britain, including the King of Scots and the King of Strathclyde, promised to believe that they would be the king's servants on sea and land. Later chroniclers made the king's 8, all oars of Edgar's state ferry on the River Dee. Illuminated manuscript, Cotton MS Vespasian A. 8th. King Edgar, King of all England from 959, was an ecclesiastical reformer, appointing bishops who imposed Benedictine rule on monastic communities such as that of Winchester. This Cotton MS Vespasian A. Octavo manuscript, in the unusual format of a book rather than a single sheet of parchment, commemorates the introduction of the rule of Benedict in 964. The manuscript was completed 2 years later and was written entirely in gold, the only known example from the late Anglo-Saxon era. Its importance is further indicated by the magnificent full-page illuminated miniature of the king at the beginning of the book. In the miniature, surrounded by a typically Anglo-Saxon, luxurious margin, Edgar holds a book, probably this letter. He offers this to Christ above, who sits in a rainbow of glory, being supported by angels. Flanking Edgar are the abbey's two patron saints, the Virgin Mary and St. Peter, who are also depicted with King Nut and Queen Emma in the Winchester Liber Vitae. The king's relationship with Christ is made clear by an inscription on the page facing the image. Thus, he who established the stars sits on a high throne. King Edgar, prostrate and venerating, adores him. Through its text, decoration with images, this manuscript illustrates the importance of the king's patronage, but also the limitations of his power. Death. Edgar died on the 8th of July 975 in Winchester, Hampshire, and was buried in Glastonbury Abbey. He was succeeded by his son Eduardo the Martyr, from his first marriage to Ethelfleda, who ended up murdered. Family and descent. Edgar, King of England, married twice and had several children. From his first marriage to Ethelfleda, he was born Edward the Martyr, King of England, successor to his father. He was murdered. From his second marriage to Elfrida of Devon, my 35th grandmother, 3 times my grandmother, were born. Ethelred II, King of the Saxons, King of England, married Elfreda, or Elgifu, of Northumbria, my 34th grandparents, thrice my grandparents, and then married Emma of Normandy. Edmund of England. Edgith from England,